Hello everyone and welcome back to Angie B Crafts. So today is a very special day because this is my first ever collaboration. So I am doing a collaboration with Julia McNeil from JMC Designs, and we've set our first challenge and this is it. So we each have 3 MDF hexagons. We each have the option to choose one sheet of paper out of one of Julia's paper packs, and I've chosen this one from the Curious Wonders paper pack, and the reason I've gone for that is because I've got words on it. We can use 3 colours, but they have to be pastels, so that's way outside my comfort zone because I rarely use pastels. I'm much more of a bright or a grunge girl. So I've gone for green, purple and blue as my colours. So I've got them in gloss sprays, and then I've got a green and a blue in chalk paint, and I've got a green and a blue in distress ink, and I've got a green, a blue and a purple in distress oxide, and I've also got a couple of acrylics that I can mix with gesso, because gesso is the other thing that we can use. So we can use gesso. We can't use any texture paste, but we can mix things with gesso to get texture if we want to. Okay, so I do have with me a little bag of beads that I can mix with some gesso to get some texture. And the other thing that we can use is any of Julia's stencils. So I've done these have actually been cleaned, folks. Look, that's been cleaned. That's it looking much better than it did. So I've got the ones that I own, and I'll see which ones I want to use. I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with this, so we'll see how we get on. I'm thinking in the first instance that I want to use at least 2 of the hexagons. And my thought is this piece here is too big to go onto there, but I suppose I could split it with that piece, because my other thought is cover this, just move the big one out of the way, cover this like this so it's going to be in the centre, and then work on top of that. Could use the other ones as a frame maybe. I'm going to start off with just sticking this on. Right, to do the sticking I am using gel medium. I'm using the Pretty Gets Gritty gel medium. It is a clear, it dries clear. Well, it would dry clear if you didn't have lots of different coloured paints mixed in it as well. Oops, don't think that's meant to happen, but that's what happens when you're a mixed media artist. So I'm just applying this initially with a palette knife. Beyond this I have no clue. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive, to be honest, because I know Julia makes brilliant things in her collaborations, and this is my first one and I want it to be good. Right, I'm just spreading right to the edges just to make sure. In fact, I might get a little brush. Let's grab a brush out of my jar. Right, my brushes have all just been washed as well. See, I've been in a cleaning mood. It's a bit scary. I'll just get a better spread to the edge with a brush. So gel medium is really cool because it stays wetter for longer, so you have a little bit more fidget time. So if you put something on, particularly on mixed media projects, if you put something on and you don't like where it is, you can actually lift it off again. And because this one dries clear, it doesn't matter if you've lifted it off. It does have a gloss to it. It's not a major gloss, but it does have a bit of a gloss to it, because whatever is that they put in to make a gel medium matte also prevents it from drying clear. I don't know the science behind it, but this is what I have learned. Okay, so get it roughly in the middle ish, kind of, sort of. Doesn't have to be exact. And then a pair of scissors Would have been helpful to have scissors ready. Scissors. So I'm just going to chop. I'm going to intentionally chop above that line because I wasn't chopping very accurately, and I may want to use that. I'm going to put that to one side and let it dry a bit before I then go around it with sandpaper. So, oh, I know what I could do with this. Right, I'm going to get my big brush now. And I'm looking around my desk looking for my clear gesso, and it's right in front of me. It's just here, I couldn't see it. Right, so I'm just going to use this, I think it's a 1 inch, or is it 3/4 inch, 20mm brush, just an ordinary decorating brush. I think this one's from B&Q. So again, this is Pretty Gets Gritty white gesso, and I'm just going to do an initial layer all over this and see what we're then going to do on top. So one of the things that I love about gesso is that it's a really good base coat. So it will cover up the MDF, and then it prevents the MDF from just sucking all the colour in on the other colours that I use. And it also means that things like inks move a bit more freely. Now I'm not actually using alcohol inks on this project, but if you want to use alcohol inks on something that's quite porous like MDF, if you put a layer of gesso over the top, it gives you the freedom to then use the alcohol inks without them just getting sucked in. And the same with acrylic inks or spray inks, you get a very different response if you have a layer of white underneath. Obviously gesso comes in black and clear as well, so if you want the wood effect to show through but you still want to add the colour and not have it absorb in, you can use a clear gesso, or you can go for black. But because this is a pastel project, I've gone for white. Right, so that's my layer of gesso, and I am going to give it a quick blast with my gun just to dry it off, so I will speed up through this. So we now have a nice clear layer, nice clear, nice dry even layer of gesso. Just going to give my brush a bit of a rinse. In fact, I might use a smaller brush now. So now I have a smaller paintbrush. All my paintbrushes have been cleaned as well. I've been naughty and left them in too long. Look, they're beginning to split. Never mind. Left them in water for not just overnight, but several days. Okay, so I think to start off with on this, I want to add the colours. So the colours I've gone for are the colours. If I just show you back to the paper, this has got purples, blues and greens in it, which is why I've chosen those colours. And I'm going to start off, I think, with a blast. Oh, I don't want to start with that. Yeah, we'll do a quick blast. I don't often use my pastel glosses, so if you see any of my videos with gloss sprays, you'll rarely see me using the pastel. Everything's collapsing in on me. Oh dear. But they are rather nice colours. So this one's called Aloe. There's Aloe down. Give a quick rub. This one's called Heather. I quite like this purpley tone. It's lovely. And the last one we're going to use is called Mineral. It's a pale blue. Let's see what happens. Okay, I think I want another little squirt of purple. There. Don't know why, just fancied it. So you can see what's happening there. Your gesso is an acrylic. These are acrylic sprays, so there's actually a resist going on, which is why you're getting all these circles. If you wanted it to be smoother, you can spray it onto just the plain board, but a lot of that first layer will just get sucked in and you won't get the vibrancy because you've not got the white underneath. So it's up to you, it depends what look you're going for. I am just going to give a wipe underneath here, just so I don't get everything covered in spray. Right, bring this back in and give it another little blast. Right, so that's not totally dry, but it's getting there. Now, one rule I forgot to mention in this is I decided I was going to be really cruel to Julia and to myself, really. It was a bit daft. And the rule is we're not allowed to use any stamps. Okay, so we can't stamp on any of the layers. I'm intrigued to see if Julia manages to stick to that. Hoping she will, but I'm not sure. Right. So, now an absolute miracle's happened here because I can never line up these two stencils, and I've just picked them up having been cleaning them, and I know they are still mucky, but they're cleaner than they were, and they're actually aligned perfectly. I'm not going to use those just yet, but I just thought I'd show you that. So this is one of my favourites. You'll see me use this in lots and lots of projects, and what I'm thinking is I can use it with the chalk paint going through it, which is going to give it an interesting texture. I just need to find myself a little sponge. Right, I've got a sponge. These makeup sponges I'm not a fan of. I have a few of them, but most of them have ended up being binned because they fell apart way too quickly. But I think they're just cheap ones from the pound shop or whatever, so hey ho. Right, so I'm just going to pick this up and dab it through and see what we end up with. I quite like this idea of doing challenges and not knowing where you're going with them. It's new and exciting. Right, so you're not seeing a lot of that, but there is some texture. Apologies, just whack the camera. There is a little bit of texture going on. I'm just going to turn it round the other way. So the brief was pastels. These are pastels. As I say, they're not colours I would often use. Not in isolation anyway. I would use pastels, but use them as part of a different project to add a differential colour. That's not really showing up much. What are you thinking, Angela? What can you do? Well, this purple's still a pastel. I could just I'll add a little bit of gesso to it. So if I do a bit of a mix here with the white gesso and just bring it down a little bit. Oh, I'm liking the marbly effect. Oh, that might be interesting. Right, let's do that. Let's go for more of a textural thing. See what happens. Oh, that looks like it's going to show up much better. Well, this is looking much better. Much better. Whoop. Yeah, that's more like it. That's more like it. I'm just thinking. Could add a little bit of that onto here as well. Since we've got it out, why not use it up? I'm just going to use kind of what's here and do it so it's not as prominent. So I'm literally just mopping up with my finger, pushing it into the stencil. So it's a bit of a less obvious pattern, and it's used up some of that. Now there is a little bit left, and I'm going to be naughty and just mop that up. If it was doing work with, as I normally do, I usually have half a dozen of my art journals floating around that I can then put extra bits of paint into, but today I haven't got that. Right, so I now want a similar effect but with the blue. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing, a little blob of blue, oops, and a little blob of gesso to make it more of a pastel, she says. Oh, still not quite a pastel. Right, If that wipe off, get a bit more white. I think I'm maybe pushing it a bit with this one. Right, I think one more blob of white should suffice. I'm going to go back in for a bit more because I've just put loads of blue paint in my gesso. Oops. Give it a good mix. This is what I love about gesso, you can use it for anything. Obviously, maybe not for sticking your soles onto your shoes, but you know, who knows. I'm just blabbing this on. So I'm not being precious about where it goes, and I'm not being stringent, ensuring it doesn't go underneath. My stencils are still got bits on them. Oh, that went straight underneath because it came up. It's just adding a background, so it's going to be at the back, so I'm not overly worried. You can see there, that's where the blade went underneath. I'm quite liking the way that's looking. Okay, now it's killing me to have to waste this, so I think I am going to find a journal to put it in. Let's see. Oh, there's a clean page. That will do. She says, having just rubbed it all over the desk. I will just clear this up because I don't want it to go on the page behind. Right, so we're going to pop this onto here. We'll use up what's on the stencil, what's left on here, just slapping it on. This is literally just clearing it all away, and it'll be the start of some other page in my journal. And it's one of the best things about art journals is that you can put whatever you want in them because they're your journal. It's your representation of what you want to do with it, and everyone does different things with it. Some people use one, and I've got one that I use in this way just to try different methodologies. Oh, that's a lovely start of a page. Right, put that to one side. Put my stencil down because we've finished with that one, she says, with optimism. Put that down there and give my blade a bit of a clean. Right. So I'm going to go back to this one, and again I'm going to give it a blast just so that I can then work on top of it. So here we have the base piece so far. Now I'm thinking that's still got blues, purples and greens. It's still pastel, so we're getting there. What do I want to do next? Where did I put that other piece of paper? There it is. I'm just thinking that I can use some of the words off here. Obviously this has got pink on it, so those ones are out, but these are blues and greens, so they can be used. Where would I want them? Not sure. Right, pop that to one side, come back to that in a moment. I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to get my sanding block. So what I'm using the sanding block for is, now this is pretty much dried on, you can see it's not coming away as easily. I'm just going to go down round the edges just to get the paper off. So this cloth is just a cloth that cleans up the sanded off bits. It's a sticky cloth. You can get them as decorators cloths. The very first one I got as part of a kit with my sanding block, and then I discovered that they sell them in B&Q and on the internet and things, and it's just a sticky cloth for cleaning up sandpaper residue. So having one of those about is really useful if you're doing this kind of thing, because it does tend to get everywhere. So I'm just neatening off the edges now. Another clean up. And we're ready to go. So they look like they're nearly dry. Okay, so this is where I'm going to put my sentiment. So my sentiment is going to include the word curial. It is going to include we're all mad here. I love these sentiments. I think it's fab that there's so many things out there to do with Alice in Wonderland. And I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. I do try not to be late for things, but sometimes you can't help it. Oops, knocking things over. Right, I'm thinking before I need to put these on, it's maybe time to do a little bit of inking. Now you'll notice when I chop, I don't do perfectly squared off edges because I know I can't, and then I get frustrated if I'm trying to make them perfect and they're not. So I just don't try. I intentionally make them wonky. So I'm thinking if I'm going to start putting some colours on here, let me grab my brushes. Right, so I've got my inking brushes here. I'm going to go for Shabby Shutters. Is a colour that I rarely use, and I love it, and I don't know why I don't use it, but I don't. Now there is still some dust, I don't know if you can see that on here, because the paint's still a little bit wet as well, but I'm not going to stress about it. See, the joys of inking. Start with one colour, end up with another. That's what it's all about. Right, what I'll do for the green, we'll add a little bit of blue. Again, another one that I love is Broken China. You can see that one's got quite a few fingerprints on it. So we're just making it a little bit more my style, a little bit messy. And you don't have to use grungy colours to get a grungy look. As you can see here, I'm using brighter colours, but we're still getting a bit of a grungy look going on, which is what I was hoping to achieve, because that's much more me. Right, so on here we've now got the blue, the green and the purple. Do we want a little bit of milled lavender on there as well? Why not? I'll get a smaller brush for that, and we'll just come in maybe just on each of the corners. Why not? So this mat that I'm working on is the Lisa Horton one. You get, well, I got two because it was buy one get one half price, I think it was. So I got two, and I've just got this one out specifically for doing this video, because my other one is covered in so much stuff that it needs a really good clean. Right, so I brought this one back in. Oh, I forgot that was still a bit wet. Never mind. Right, so that's just proved that just heating it is actually not taking away from the liquid underneath. It's just put a skin on it. So I'm going to use the inks, but I'm not going to go over the stenciled bits just at the minute. And I'm going to start with the lavender on this one. So it really is, mixed media is just using more than one medium, and it doesn't matter what the mediums are. And I suppose if you were being particularly pedantic, you could say that mixed media was using watercolours, because you're using paint and water. So in theory that would be mixed media. But the type I'm talking about is much more a range of different products. So far we've used gesso, which is an acrylic, we've used spray acrylics, we've used chalk paint, which is an acrylic, We have used Distress Oxides, which are pigment and dye-based inks mixed together. We have used, what else have we used? Paper, glue. We've used lots of things so far. I really don't know where this is going. I haven't gotten that far in my little head yet. So I've intentionally made the corners a different colour on this layer than that layer. And the other thing to bear in mind is, with layers, don't panic. So even though this has got this, and I know I'm going to be covering it up, I'm still using it, I'm still decorating it and adding to it. Because I think if you're trying to focus just on one area, it stops your flow. So I tend to just add things in anyway. Okay. Do we want to add some ordinary distress? You know what, I don't know that we do. I'm going to pop that one to one side again, and we're going to pick up this one, and I'm going to use a little bit of water because these ones are nearly dry, so I'm not worried about spraying water on it. And the reason I'm doing that is because Distress Oxides are water activated, and you get a very different look once you add the water on. I'm just going to add a little bit more. And we'll see what happens. I'm going to get a cloth and give it a wipe. I just have to remove everything I've now piled on top of my cloth. And the reason I'm doing this is just to remove some of the colour, so you can see that you're starting to get little bits of bleaching, and then we just need to give it a blast just to fix it. So now we have to decide what other stencils we're going to bring in. I'm thinking, I love these light bulbs. So how about, just wipe up some of this. We use some of the light bulbs on here. And we do that just with distress inks rather than Distress Oxides. So where's my brushes? Where did I put them? Oh, they're there. Right, so I want that to just hit the top there. So we're getting the colours through right up to the very top. I'm purposely going over this a few times because I really want it to show. Ta-da! Oh, I like that. And then I'm thinking another one over here, slightly off the page. I'm sticking with the same colour for this one, I think. And then I'm going to do a little one here. I'm going to use a different one because that one's just getting a bit bent. This is me with my cleaning. I don't look after them properly. It's terrible. When I do clean them, I just really scrub at them. So sometimes the little pieces flick up. One of the things I like about Julia's stencils as well is that they're all really thick. So you can actually put lots and lots of different mediums through them. Okay, so that is now looking a little bit more interesting. In fact, it's looking a little bit curious. Okay, I want to use these in some way. They need to be mixed with paint in order to go on, but I like the texture. Some of them are a bit too big, but the tiny little seed beads I think would be really nice texture. And that's the only way I'm allowed to apply texture, is if it's applied in paint. I can't use a texture paste. So I'm going to give it a go with these. I can't not have texture. I usually use loads of different texture pastes. So to not have texture would be very uncomfortable. Okay, oop, they're alive. Right, which colour should we go for? I've got blue. Quite like, do you want the green? Tell you what, if I mix with the gesso, yeah, I'll mix with the gesso, and then I think I'll add the green in as well. So I'm going to pop the gesso to one side. I'm probably going to end up with way too much, and then I'm going to scoop these into it. Oh, they're adding lots of texture. Oh, but yeah, that is on camera, that's good. I suddenly had a panic then that I hadn't got that on camera. But it's there. Ooh, I've just had a thought of how I might get... Right, I'm going to try something using a colour that initially isn't going to be a pastel, but when I add it to the gesso it should be. I'm going to try using my inks, acrylic inks. Now I do like these. The ones that I'm using at the minute is the De La Roni one, or De La Roni, and they come with a little pipette which makes application very, very easy. I'll start with 2 drops. Now I did give it a bit of a shake because the pigment sits at the bottom. Oh yes, that's making it pastel-y, but definitely blue. So apparently we're going for blue on this one. Oh, that's a nice pastel blue. I'm not going to risk it and put any more on. We'll stick with that one. I think I've just put white gesso all over my face. Oops. So to apply these, I am just sticking them wherever they land. I'm not being precious. It's just to add a little bit of texture. Put some up here, I think. I'm feeling worried now that some of my colours maybe don't look as pastel-y. But you know what, we can dull them down a bit, we can make them more pastel-y. Do you remember what I said about them being layers and background? So I'm not worried about the fact that I've gone over the top of that ball, but I've gone over a little bit of this one. It doesn't matter, it is the background. It isn't what your focal part of your piece is going to be. It should be in the background. Background should be in the back. They can be interesting, but they should be in the back. Quite liking the way that's looking. Right. Where's that other piece? There it is. I'm thinking I might need to, so that's going to go on top of there, which is fine, but I'm needing to tone this down a little bit. It's still not quite dry, but we'll try a little bit of dry brushing with it. So let me grab a dry paintbrush, not one out of my water pot. So for dry brushing you just need tiny little bit of paint and then brush off the excess, and it is just meant to highlight whatever you're working on. I'm going to get a piece of kitchen towel and just show you how much I'm wiping off, because it really isn't a lot. Just a teeny tiny little bit that you're putting on, so you're pretty much taking it all off. So your brush is nearly empty, and then you just rub it over, and what it's doing is adding a very light layer of colour to what's already there, and because you're applying it so gently it will pick up more on the sticky up bits. I'm being really cautious because I'm conscious this one isn't quite dry. It is coming on. I doubt you can see it on camera because it's a tiny difference it's making, but it is actually just adding a little bit of pallor to the blue and to the purple. It's really quite a good way of adding bits on. Now, if you wanted to, if this wasn't a challenge that was limiting me, I would be adding on shiny bits with this, so some form of gilding wax or patina of some description. Oh, that's interesting because that's just popped and some of the ink, the paint from underneath's come out and started spreading. I quite like that. Right, I'm wanting to add some more colour around the edges of this because I'm not keen on the way this is looking around the edges. I am for me, but for this project I don't think it quite works. So I'm going to go with this again. Good old gesso. I do love gesso. It's such a clever product. So it's slightly different from your white acrylic because it is effectively a base coat. I'm wanting to bring this baby blue in more, so I'm going to add a couple of drip drops and then mix it all in. So it takes the colour better than a normal white acrylic would as well, just because of the way it's made. I don't understand the science of it, never looked into it, but it works. Oh, that's better. I'm happy with that. So usually I would use black on the edge of any piece to frame it, but when you're doing a collaboration and the rules state you have to use pastels and you can only use 3 colours, I'm going to stick to just using those 3 colours. So I've gone blue, green and purple. I've stuck with that, but I'm not going to bring my black ink or my black pen. It's so tempting, but I'm not going to. I'm going to be good. I wonder if Julia will manage not to use a black pen, because she does like a black pen. She also likes a white pen actually. She likes using gel pens to make her work stand out. I wonder if she'll manage not to. I'll just put my thumb in that. Oh dear. So this is my edging now. The frame is now a different colour to my normal black, but I think it's just bringing it in, bringing the eye in a little bit, which is what you want from a frame. Okay, I'm going to have to blast that again, folks. So this is where we're up to now. Some of it I can see is still a little bit wet, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. We can still start to construct it. And this also is a little bit wet, but I'm just going to show you where things are going to go. I'm going to offset slightly. I'm actually going to spin this round. This bit here feels, I don't like this, so I'm wanting to kind of mask it off a little bit by offsetting this piece, but I think this piece still needs more edging, and I'm wondering whether to go with the same colour. I'm thinking I might go with a purple, but a watered down purple. So I'm going to pop that over there, and I am going to get my purple. I'm going to get this one and a little bit of gesso again. See, gesso, fabulous. Use it for everything. Got a different spatula this time, so it's not got any blue on it, and I want it nice and pastel-y in the purple. I want to go a little bit further pastel, so I'm just going to wipe the purple off a little bit. I'm terrible at not contaminating gesso. Let's get a lot. There we are. I do want it really pastel-y now. But what it's gonna do, because it's gonna edge it, it's just gonna make it sit out from what's behind it. So we're drawing our eye in. So with this now, I'm gonna go around the edges. I'm gonna do my usual let's just slap it on and see what happens method. I'm not careful with placement. Occasionally I will get careful and decide that I need to be careful, but generally it is see where things land and see if I like them. And if you don't like anything, there's nothing to stop you from going over it. So what I'm doing a little bit here as well is the edge of the MDF tends to be quite dark. So I'm going to go around again in a minute with my finger, but I'm just starting to get a little hint of colour onto the edges, because that is what we want. We want to mask those dark edges. So there's no way this is going to be totally dry on the video, but once it is dry I will take photos of it and I will put them up on my Facebook page. So if you want to see the finished thing, please feel free to pop over to my Facebook page, Angie B Cards and Crafts, and give me your thoughts. Right, I want a little bit more there, because then it's all framed. It's a bit like cake decorating this, because it just looks a bit like icing because of the colouring. So I'm literally just going around with my finger to get rid of that dark edge, because this is going on top of the other piece. I don't want the dark edge. On the other piece I'm absolutely fine with it having a dark edge, but because this is going on top, I don't want that differential. I want it to be in keeping. We're getting there. We're getting there. Now there were 3 pieces of MDF, but I think I'm just going to stick to using the 2, because I'm quite liking how the 2 of them look. Yes, I'm liking that. Just mop up a little bit of this and bring this back in. Right, so we want to cover that bit, so we want that to sit about there. What do we think? Round about there. Yeah, that works for me. So to put it on, I'm going to use good old gel medium again. I'm just going to give my hands a wipe on my raggy, because they are covered. Luckily this raggy is actually a little bit damp, so it's doing a good job of cleaning my hands off. Right, so put the white gesso away, Angela, that's not gel medium. Get the gel medium and start using that. So I'm just going to slap it onto this one. I'm not worried if it covers the whole of the surface of the other one, it is just to adhere it onto this one, and as long as I maintain it roughly in the right area, it's going to stick it. But if it does leak out, it's not the end of the world, because as I say, this dries totally clear. Right, I think that's going to be enough. I do tend to put a lot of gel medium on things, probably a bit too much, which is why my pot's empty so quickly. And I am going to lift this over, bearing in mind, oop, everything's still a bit wet. I'm going to lift this over and just place it about there, so it's off centre to that side. Well, this is looking a bit different from my norm. I'm liking these challenges. Okay, so now we have these, and we also have the fact that we cannot use black. So what am I going to use? In fact, I'm going to use my white gesso again. No, that's the gel medium, Angela. No, that is the white gesso, Angela. Yes, it is the white gesso. See, it's hard to tell the difference. So I'm just going to apply it using my finger. I'm going to use the board as my palette, and I'm just going up and over very slightly onto the sentiment, and I'm not worried that it's coming off as well, because I actually want it to look slightly aged. So I'm almost putting it on and then taking it back off again, so it's going to look a bit, I suppose, snow-capped, but we just want it to stand up a little bit from here. I've just realised I've been using white gesso, but we didn't actually say it had to be white gesso, so I could have got away with using my black gesso. Oh, sugar butties, never mind. Right, so there's one done. So you can see that's starting to stand out a bit just because it's got the white round it. This one's likely to stand out a bit more because it is darker in the middle. So you can make something out of whatever you have, and that's the thing I like about challenges like this. And I love watching other people's challenges as well, because it's about challenging your creative ability and not saying, oh, I've got everything I need to make whatever I want. It's about saying, well, what can I make? Say, with, for example, what's on your desk? What can you make with what's on your desk? I've done that a few times and ended up with some interesting pieces. And then for the curious, I don't want to use white on that one. I'm really tempted. Right. Julia's not watching, I've decided. Shh, don't tell her. I just want a slightly brighter blue for this one. A little bit brighter. So that's going to stand out more, because it's already got white here, so I didn't want to use the same colour, but I do want it to stand out. So it's curious how I think this is a pastel colour, isn't it? Very curious. It is. It's pastel. I mixed it with white. That makes it a pastel. Right. I'm just going to let that dry off a little bit and mop up what is here. So ordinarily what I would be doing now is actually going around the edges with black ink, grunging it up a little bit more, but you know what, I'm looking at that on camera and I actually quite like it. I don't think that's too bad for a first attempt. I'm just going to blast this one because it's a little bit wet still. Right, so now we need the gel medium, which is this pot. And again, I'm just using my finger. Your fingers are your best friend. I'm going to put that there. Now there's something that I want to add and I can't as part of the challenge, but I would love to add something around here, and it would probably be something like some cotton or some MDF, like little MDF pieces, which would be ideal. I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. See, I put my finger in things. It's useful to let things dry in between, but obviously because this is on camera, it's hard to let it dry in between. But ideally, you would. Right. So there is my finished piece. I quite like it. I think that's alright. So the rules were pastel, one sheet of paper, so the extra colours coming from the one sheet of paper, gesso, and you can only add texture by adding bits in, no stamping, and Julia's stencils. Now you'll notice these are upside down now, and you know what, I actually really like that. Wasn't intentional, but they look almost like flowers coming up, and you're in the curious world of Alice in Wonderland, so who's to say that that wouldn't happen? Anyway, I hope you've liked that as a first challenge. I will be doing more. Let me know your thoughts, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.